Anyone have any questions for our insider? Yes.
You said that you bought your first horse in Europe. Was that on Mr. McAnally's advice, or did you decide that, or was there a particular reason?
Well, that's a really good question, and I have to tell you, when I get into it, I didn't know where I was going to buy a horse, and at that time I didn't quite understand as much that if you go with a Ron McAnally or somebody like that, you're going to buy horses from overseas primarily, and they're not going to typically be 2-year-olds. That's what they specialize in. So he has a network of people in South America and in Europe that would look for horses, and that's the way we bought it. If I would have started off with somebody else like a Bob Baffert, that would not have been that would not have been the case. So it would have been you buy yearlings and 2-year-olds with a trainer like that. So we got very heavily involved in buying horses from overseas. We had some success with it. After about 5 or 6 years, we decided we wanted to move more domestic. And the last couple of years, we've been buying more domestic. And the last horse we bought a horse in Brazil called Zardana. You may know of Zardana. She won the Ayacoa, and she's out here. You're probably going to run her a couple of weeks, someplace back east. But yeah, you're not quite sure. We ended up going down the European route very early in the game.
Any other questions? Yes.
When you said to find a trainer you trust, what criteria did you use for trust?
Well, a lot of it is history. I mean, if you've been a fan, you kind of have, trainers have reputations. Once you become an owner and you become a partner with a trainer, it's a much closer relationship. And you may go in thinking that it's trustworthy, and then you may find some things. I'm not saying I've experienced that, but you may find some things that you have some concerns about. And then one of the hardest decisions is leaving the trainer, because you end up having not only a professional relationship, you end up having a personal relationship. But there is a point in time where that could happen, and when it does, you have to do it. And you do it in the nicest way possible.
Before you owned any, you mainly used your experience as a fan.
Exactly. Yeah, as I said, I've been a fan forever, and when I've heard some of these names and trainers, I've watched them, for so many years. And my assumption was that if they're training at that kind of level, they're pretty good, and so you're tying up at the right kind of person.
Question right there.
Yeah, you mentioned about partnerships, and it sounds to me like you were talking about maybe 3 friends getting together and going in and buying a horse. But what about your take on, you can go online and find like clubs where you can buy a unit for $5,000 or $10,000, which is a part of a horse,
No.
Do you have any take on those kind of ownerships?
If they're reputable and they have experience, and you maybe even if you know somebody else who has done it. I'm in partnership with 3 Chimneys, which is where there's about 12, 15 people in partnership. And again, I did that to have access to trainers all over the country, which I kind of wanted to do. In partnership with 2 or 3 individuals here, but we all had some experience. If you have no experience and you're going into a partnership, you really just do your homework on what kind of partnership it is. See what kind of horses they've had. Maybe talk more about some of the partners. You might even have more experience with some of those kinds of partnerships also. But I would do it based on reputation and do your homework. Don't just take everything on faith.
It's a great time to segue, because I think Gary, as a managing partner of Little Red Feather Racing, can touch on that question before he talks dollars and cents. Let's introducing Gary as an equine attorney and one of the more informed and educated people that I talk to about racing as a business rather than what is racing on the racetrack. So let's give a round of applause to Gary Fenn. He's going to talk a little bit about cost.
I'm a part of a horse racing syndicate. I feel like we're one of the bigger ones, and you can find us online. But I think when you're looking for a partnership, I think the best thing you probably do is call the TOC office and ask for not just a recommendation, but to ask about the different partnerships that are out there. Ask what they're like, ask what kind of horses they buy, ask what kind of people are involved with them, diving in, at least for a little bit, and seeing how they operate before you actually go ahead and spend all your disposable income on something like that. Cost of ownership is kind of a two-way street. This is a business. This should be active, when you're going into it as a business, you're buying a racehorse, and you're buying a racehorse for fun, but you're hopefully buying a racehorse to make a little money. You can buy a horse for nothing right now. You can buy a horse in a claiming race for $5,000 or $10,000. You can go to an auction and buy a horse for $10,000 or $20,000, and all the way up to $1 million or $5 million. It all depends on your budget. The first thing I would do before buying a racehorse is calling somebody that you know in the business, or calling the TOC and asking for a recommendation in export. Somebody who, a bloodstock agent, who would go out and help you buy that first horse. And the bloodstock agent is going to have all of the connections. He's going to know where the sales are. He's going to know the owners that are out there looking to move horses. He's going to know the trainers who are out there looking to move horses. After you buy a horse, the interesting thing is, no matter whether you have Richard's Kid or a $5,000 claimer, all horses basically cost the same. And that cost is roughly $3,000 to $4,000 a month. If your horse is on the farm, it's going to cost a little bit less. If your horse is running every 3 weeks, it's going to cost a little bit more. But some of the costs in that $3,000 to $4,000 a month are your training costs. Your trainer is going to cost between $75 to maybe $125 a day. And that cost is supposed to be his out-of-pocket cost. The trainers are not designed to make money off of you on the day rate. His cost goes into the feed, his cost goes into his employees, his cost goes into workers' comp for his employees, and that's supposed to be his out-of-pocket cost. A trainer generally makes money in races. He generally makes money from the purses. After that $75 to $125 a day cost, you've got vet fees, and depending on your trainer, your vet fees can be a couple $100 a month, your vet fees can be $1,000 a month. If you have a horse that's on GastroGuard, it's a very, very expensive ulcer drug, runs about $1,000 a month. Generally, trainers will not put every horse on GastroGuard, only the better horses, only because they can afford to do it. The best thing I would do if I was starting, and I started doing this 10 years ago, my business partner, Billy Koch, started Little Red Feather Racing in 2001. And he did it because he couldn't afford a racehorse on his own. So he grabbed a bunch of friends together and put together a partnership. And from there, their first horse, fortunately for them, was a horse named Singletary, who a few years later went on to win the Breeders' Cup. And they took a $30,000 horse and made it $2 million from it. So it was a great start for them and his partners. And it was a $30,000 horse that these guys bought into. So the best way to do it would be to either get some friends together or call the TOC and ask for recommendation on one of the partnerships, because you can go in for $1,000 or $5,000 or $10,000, and you can, whether it's a club or an actual horse, but generally what you're buying is a percentage of a horse. And if you start off, if your disposable income is $5,000 or $10,000, it's going to be very hard to buy a quality horse for that amount. I would much rather own 5% of a $500,000 horse than 100% of a $10,000 horse. Those horses generally do better. Your odds are you will do better, and you'll have a lot more fun. When we put together our business plans, there's a section called Overview, and the overview has two subsections. One is financial and one is social. And the financial goes through what you're looking for in a partnership financially, and the other one is social, because when you come to the racetrack, I think a lot of you come here because it's fun. You come here because there's some energy and some feeling that you get from being here, and that's what you get from owning a racehorse, and that's part of it. And so if your income level is such that you can only get in for $5,000 or $10,000, you can still have the time of your life.